Welcome back. Today we're uncovering four of America's most fascinating collectible coins, the Buffalo nickel. Most people never notice the tiny details that can tell an incredible story, including why some examples have completely lost their dates. Stay with us all the way to the end, because the final coin we'll examine has a unique feature that collectors find especially intriguing, and you'll see why careful observation matters so much in the world of rare coins. First, Buffalo nickel. Few American coins capture the imagination of collectors quite like the 1923 Buffalo nickel. At first glance, it appears to be an ordinary 5-cent piece that once passed through countless hands during one of the most fascinating decades in American history. Yet hidden within its worn surfaces can be clues that dramatically change how specialists evaluate it today. Every tiny detail, from the sharpness of the Native American's braid to the remaining contours of the buffalo's horn, tells a story about where the coin has traveled and how well it survived more than a century of circulation. Some examples have quietly remained in family collections for generations, while others have emerged from forgotten albums and estate holdings to surprise even experienced numismatists. Later in this documentary, you'll discover what authenticated examples have actually sold for at auction, and why certain specimens command extraordinary collector attention, while countless others remain far more modest in value. The difference is never determined by the date alone. Instead, it is the combination of authenticity, preservation, strike quality, rarity, and collector demand that transforms an ordinary-looking nickel into a highly sought-after historical artifact. The 1923 Buffalo nickel was struck during a period when the United States was experiencing remarkable cultural and economic transformation. The First World War had ended only a few years earlier. Automobiles were becoming increasingly common. Radio broadcasting was connecting households across the nation, and industries were expanding at a remarkable pace. Americans carried Buffalo nickels every day as they bought groceries, paid streetcar fares, and exchanged small amounts of money in a rapidly modernizing economy. The Buffalo nickel series itself had debuted in 1913, replacing Charles Barber's Liberty Head nickel after growing public demand for more artistic American coinage. Sculptor James Earl Fraser created a design that celebrated the nation's frontier heritage rather than classical European imagery. His portrait on the obverse was inspired by features from several Native American leaders rather than one individual, creating a symbolic representation of America's indigenous peoples. The reverse depicted a powerful American bison, often associated with Black Diamond, a famous buffalo that lived at the Central Park Zoo, although historians continue to debate the exact inspiration. Together, these designs reflected a uniquely American artistic vision that distinguished the Buffalo nickel from every previous 5-cent coin. Collectors studying a 1923 Buffalo nickel quickly learn that mint location plays an important role in understanding the coin's history. Philadelphia struck the issue without a mint mark, while Denver and San Francisco produced coins bearing small d and s mint marks beneath the denomination on the reverse. Philadelphia manufactured more than 35 million examples, making it the most available of the three mints, while Denver struck approximately 6.1 million and San Francisco produced just over 7 million pieces. Even though those mintages may sound substantial, survival rates tell a very different story. Buffalo nickels circulated heavily because 5 cents represented meaningful purchasing power during the early 20th century. Unfortunately, Fraser's beautiful design also presented technical challenges. The date was placed on one of the highest points of the obverse, making it especially vulnerable to wear. Millions of Buffalo nickels gradually lost their dates through ordinary circulation, leaving countless pieces nearly impossible to identify without specialized restoration techniques. As a result, fully dated 1923 examples have become significantly more desirable than their dateless counterparts, especially when they display strong detail across both sides of the coin. Physically, the 1923 Buffalo nickel remains a remarkable achievement in American minting despite the practical challenges its design created. Every genuine example should weigh approximately 5 grams, measure 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and consist of an alloy containing 75% copper and 25% nickel with a plain edge. Those specifications seem straightforward, but authentication often requires much closer examination than simply checking dimensions. Specialists carefully inspect lettering, surface texture, metal flow, and microscopic die characteristics that counterfeiters frequently fail to reproduce accurately. Genuine coins exhibit natural luster patterns created during striking, while altered or cast counterfeits often reveal porous surfaces, unusual color, or softened design details. Some counterfeiters have attempted to modify mint marks or even alter dates from neighboring years to imitate scarcer varieties, making professional authentication especially important before assigning substantial value. Services such as PCGS and NGC evaluate not only authenticity but also preservation, assigning standardized grades that allow buyers and sellers to communicate consistently within the marketplace. That independent verification has become one of the most important factors influencing confidence whenever significant sums of money are involved. Condition is where the story of a buffalo nickel truly begins to separate ordinary pieces from exceptional ones. Coins graded good or very good typically display heavy circulation, with the buffalo's horn largely missing and much of the Native American's hair blending together through decades of wear. Fine and very fine examples retain stronger facial contours, partial horn detail, and more visible braid elements, making them considerably more attractive to collectors. Extremely fine and about uncirculated specimens preserve much of the original design, while mint state examples never entered circulation and retain the brilliant mint frost created when they left the coin presses in 1923. Within mint state grades, tiny differences become surprisingly important. A coin certified MS-63 may appear impressive to most observers, yet an MS-65 specimen with sharper strike quality, cleaner surfaces, and richer luster can command dramatically higher demand. Collectors also evaluate eye appeal, natural tunning, and the absence of distracting marks. Soft strikes occasionally occurred on buffalo nickels, particularly around the buffalo's shoulder and the Native American's braid, so a sharply struck coin often earns additional respect from experienced specialists even when numerical grades appear similar. Only after examining authenticity and condition does the market begin assigning meaningful value, and this is where many misconceptions disappear. A circulated 1923 Philadelphia buffalo nickel with honest wear, but a clear date, generally remains an affordable historical collectible, while sharply preserved mint state examples become increasingly scarce as grades improve. Authenticated pieces certified in attractive uncirculated condition have frequently traded within roughly the $1,200 to $2,800 range, depending on certification, eye appeal, strike quality, and current collector demand. Particularly desirable examples displaying exceptional originality and superior preservation have exceeded those figures in competitive auctions. The 1923 S issue often attracts stronger premiums because well-struck high-grade survivors are considerably harder to locate than their lower-grade counterparts. Meanwhile, certain certified 1923D examples with outstanding surfaces and impressive luster have generated equally enthusiastic bidding among registry-set collectors. Extraordinary auction prices occasionally reported for buffalo nickels almost always involve elite-grade certified specimens or exceptionally rare die varieties rather than ordinary circulated coins. Those remarkable results should never be interpreted as representing every coin carrying the same date, because rarity, grade, originality, and verified authenticity remain the decisive factors behind every significant sale. Beyond standard issues, advanced collectors search for die varieties, striking anomalies, and genuine mint errors that add another layer of fascination to the 1923 buffalo nickel. Minor double design elements, repunched mint marks on branchment issues, die cracks, retained cuds, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and dramatic lamination errors occasionally appear. Although truly significant examples are far less common than internet rumors often suggest, Every suspected error deserves careful examination because post-mint damage is frequently mistaken for a valuable mint-made characteristic. Damage caused by tools, chemicals, cleaning, or environmental corrosion generally reduces collector value rather than increasing it. Professional grading companies distinguish legitimate mint errors from alterations by analyzing how metal flowed during striking and whether the anomaly occurred before the coin entered circulation. Cleaning represents another major concern. Many well-intentioned owners polish old nickels in hopes of improving their appearance, but experienced collectors almost always prefer untouched original surfaces. Artificial shine, hairline scratches, or chemical residue can dramatically reduce desirability, even on otherwise scarce dates. For long-term preservation, experts recommend handling coins only by their edges, storing them in inert holders free from PVC, maintaining stable temperature and humidity, and avoiding frequent unnecessary handling that can slowly damage delicate surfaces. More than 100 years after leaving the presses of Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the 1923 Buffalo nickel continues to represent far more than a simple 5-cent denomination. It preserves a snapshot of American artistry, frontier symbolism, industrial craftsmanship, and everyday commerce during the early 20th century. Each surviving example has followed its own unique path through history, and that journey is reflected in every remaining design detail, every trace of mint luster, and every subtle mark left by decades of use or careful preservation. Modern collectors continue pursuing these coins because they combine historical significance with genuine challenges in grading, authentication, and rarity assessment. Whether a specimen ultimately proves to be a modest circulated keepsake or a premium certified collectible worth several $1,000s, its true importance lies in the evidence it carries from another era. Careful research, professional authentication, realistic expectations, and an appreciation for originality remain the foundations of responsible collecting. Those principles explain why the finest authenticated 1923 Buffalo nickels continue attracting intense competition whenever they appear at major auctions, while also reminding every collector that lasting value is built upon documented rarity, exceptional preservation, and enduring demand rather than the date alone. Next, Buffalo nickels. The 1936 Buffalo nickel occupies a fascinating place in American numismatic history because it represents one of the final chapters of a design that had already become an icon of the nation's frontier heritage. By the time this coin entered circulation, millions of Americans handled Buffalo nickels every day without realizing that some examples would eventually become prized collectibles studied under magnification by specialists around the world. What appears to be an ordinary 5-cent coin can reveal remarkable differences in strike quality, preservation, originality, and rarity that dramatically influence collector interest. Every surviving specimen tells a different story, from decades of commercial use to careful preservation inside albums or old family collections. Later in this documentary, you'll discover which characteristics made authenticated 1936 Buffalo nickels especially desirable, how professional grading separates ordinary pieces from exceptional survivors, and what verified examples have sold for when outstanding quality and strong collector demand come together. As with every historic coin, the date alone never determines importance, making this issue far more intriguing than it first appears. The year 1936 unfolded during a period when the United States was gradually recovering from the hardships of the Great Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal programs continued reshaping the nation's economy. Unemployment remained a significant concern despite signs of improvement, and Americans relied heavily on coins like the Buffalo nickel for everyday purchases. 5 cents could still buy useful necessities, ensuring these coins circulated constantly through banks, stores, restaurants, and factories across the country. The Buffalo nickel itself had first appeared in 1913 after replacing the Liberty head design as part of a broader movement to improve the artistic quality of American coinage. Sculptor James Earl Fraser sought to create a design that reflected uniquely American themes rather than traditional European-inspired imagery. His portrait combined features from several Native American leaders to create a symbolic representation of indigenous heritage instead of depicting a single, identifiable individual. The reverse displayed a massive American bison, honoring one of the continent's most recognizable animals and serving as a reminder of a frontier that had largely disappeared by the early 20th century. Together, these images transformed a small circulating coin into one of the most celebrated artistic achievements ever produced by the United States Mint. Unlike many earlier buffalo nickels that suffered from inconsistent production quality, the 1936 issues are generally respected for stronger strikes and better overall manufacture, although meaningful differences still exist between the three mint facilities. Philadelphia produced the largest number of coins without a mint mark beneath the denomination, while Denver added a small D and San Francisco used an S in the same location on the reverse. Philadelphia struck more than 118 million pieces, Denver produced more than 24 million, and San Francisco manufactured over 14 million examples. Those impressive mintages mean that 1936 buffalo nickels are not rare by date alone, yet true rarity develops rapidly as collectors pursue coins with outstanding preservation and original surfaces. Because buffalo nickels circulated extensively, countless examples lost detail across the Native American's cheek, braid, and feather, while the buffalo's horn, shoulder, and hip gradually became smooth through years of commerce. High-grade survivors escaped that fate, and their scarcity becomes increasingly apparent as grading standards become more demanding. Registry set collectors, competing for the finest certified examples, often focus less on total mintage and more on how few exceptional specimens remain today. Every genuine 1936 buffalo nickel was struck from an alloy containing 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighs approximately 5 grams, measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and features a plain edge. Those official specifications remain useful during authentication, but experienced numismatists rarely rely on measurements alone. They carefully study microscopic design details, die characteristics, natural mint luster, and the flow lines created during the striking process. Genuine coins typically display consistent metal texture and crisp lettering that counterfeit pieces often fail to reproduce accurately. Modern counterfeiters have become increasingly sophisticated, making professional authentication more important than ever for coins that appear unusually well-preserved or potentially valuable. Third-party grading services, such as PCGS and NGC, authenticate, encapsulate, and assign standardized grades that greatly increase confidence among buyers and sellers. Certification also protects collectors from altered coins, including examples with added mint marks or manipulated surfaces designed to imitate more desirable pieces. Although outright counterfeits of common-date buffalo nickels are less frequently encountered than those of rarer key dates, authentication remains a wise investment whenever significant collector premiums may be involved. Condition ultimately separates the ordinary from the extraordinary, and few coin series demonstrate that principle more clearly than the buffalo nickel. A heavily circulated 1936 example may retain little more than an outline of Fraser's artwork, while a mint state coin can display frosty luster, sharply defined hair strands, and a fully detailed buffalo that appears almost exactly as it did when it left the coin presses. Professional grading begins with circulated categories such as good, very good, fine, very fine, extremely fine, and about uncirculated before progressing into mint state grades ranging from MS60 through the superb gem and superb gem levels. Even within mint state, subtle differences matter tremendously. Collectors carefully examine contact marks, strike sharpness, eye appeal, and originality. A buffalo nickel with complete horn detail, bold feather definition, strong braid separation, and brilliant undisturbed luster will almost always attract greater demand than another coin carrying the same numerical grade but displaying weaker visual characteristics. Unlike copper coins, buffalo nickels are not classified by color designations such as red, red-brown, or brown because their copper-nickel composition tones differently, often developing attractive silver gray, golden, champagne, or soft pastel hues that collectors appreciate when they occur naturally. Only after authenticity and condition have been carefully established does market value begin to reflect the coin's true desirability. Most circulated 1936 Buffalo nickels remain affordable historical collectibles, but certified mint state examples can command dramatically higher prices because relatively few survived without significant wear. Authenticated coins, graded in attractive uncirculated condition, have commonly traded in the neighborhood of approximately $1,350 to $2,950 depending on certification, strike quality, originality, and prevailing collector demand. Exceptionally attractive examples with superior eye appeal or unusually sharp strikes often exceed those levels when registry collectors compete for them. The 1936D and 1936S issues can become especially desirable in higher grades because fully struck examples are less plentiful than their overall mintages might suggest. At the highest levels of preservation, verified auction prices have climbed substantially beyond ordinary collector ranges, but those remarkable results involve certified elite-grade specimens rather than average examples found in circulation. Every significant sale reflects a combination of professional authentication, rarity within the assigned grade, originality, and current market enthusiasm rather than the date alone. Specialists also devote considerable attention to legitimate die varieties and mint-made errors associated with the 1936 Buffalo nickel. One of the best-known varieties is the 1936 D3½ legs Buffalo nickel, created after excessive die polishing partially removed the front leg of the buffalo. This recognized variety is documented in major reference works and commands substantial collector interest when authenticated. Because of its popularity, altered coins attempting to imitate the variety have appeared over the years, making expert authentication absolutely essential before any premium is assigned. Other genuine mint errors, such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or dramatic die cracks, are known for the Buffalo nickel series but remain genuinely scarce and must be evaluated individually. Damage caused after the coin left the mint, including harsh cleaning, filing, polishing, corrosion, or artificial tunning, should never be confused with legitimate mint errors. Experienced collectors generally prefer original surfaces that have aged naturally over decades. Proper preservation means handling coins only by their edges, storing them in inert archival quality holders, avoiding PVC-containing flips, and maintaining a stable environment with low humidity to minimize long-term environmental damage. The enduring appeal of the 1936 Buffalo nickel comes from far more than its age or denomination. It represents an era when American coinage balanced artistic excellence with everyday practicality, allowing millions of ordinary citizens to carry miniature works of sculpture in their pockets. Today, surviving examples continue attracting historians, investors, registry competitors, and collectors because they combine historical significance with measurable rarity in the finest grades. While only authenticated elite condition coins or recognized varieties have achieved extraordinary auction results, every genuine 1936 Buffalo nickel preserves a tangible connection to the closing years of one of America's most beloved coin designs before the Jefferson nickel replaced it in 1938. Careful research, professional grading, realistic expectations, and respect for originality remain the foundation of responsible collecting. Those principles explain why exceptional examples continue to generate strong demand generation after generation, ensuring that the 1936 Buffalo nickel remains not merely an old coin, but a lasting symbol of American history, craftsmanship, and the enduring pursuit of numismatic excellence. Next coin. The investigation begins with a coin that many people would dismiss after only a quick glance. A worn 1924 Buffalo nickel, also known as the Indian head nickel, can appear no different from countless other old 5-cent pieces that once circulated through grocery stores, railroad stations, and neighborhood banks. Yet experienced numismatists approach this date very differently. Before they ever consider what the coin might be worth, they begin examining details that most people overlook entirely. They study the strength of the date, the placement of the mint mark, the sharpness of the Native American's hair braid, the texture of the buffalo's shoulder, and the subtle glow that may still remain from the original striking process. Those seemingly minor details can completely transform the story the coin tells. As we continue examining this remarkable issue together, you'll discover why authenticated examples have become highly desirable among collectors, what separates an ordinary survivor from an exceptional one, and why only certain carefully preserved specimens have achieved impressive collector values in today's numismatic marketplace. The year 1924 was an interesting moment in American history. The nation was enjoying much of the economic optimism associated with the Roaring Twenties, although agriculture and some rural communities continued facing financial pressure after the post-World War I recession. Factories expanded production, automobile ownership increased, and commerce relied heavily on small-denomination coins for everyday transactions. 5 cents represented meaningful purchasing power, ensuring buffalo nickels rarely remained idle for long. They moved constantly through cash registers, banks, and pockets, accumulating countless small marks with every exchange. The Buffalo Nickel series itself had debuted in 1913 after public criticism of the Liberty Head nickel encouraged the United States Mint to pursue a more distinctly American design. Sculptor James Earl Fraser answered that challenge with artwork celebrating the nation's frontier heritage. His Native American portrait combined features from several respected tribal leaders rather than depicting one individual, while the reverse presented a powerful American bison, symbolizing strength, endurance, and a disappearing chapter of the American landscape. Those artistic choices elevated the Buffalo nickel beyond ordinary circulating coinage and eventually helped establish it as one of the most admired designs in United States numismatic history. Now the closer examination begins, because the mint that produced a 1924 Buffalo nickel plays an important role in how collectors evaluate it today. Philadelphia struck the issue without a mint mark and produced more than 21 million examples. Denver added a small d beneath the denomination on the reverse, but struck only about 5.3 million pieces, making the 1924 D one of the more challenging circulation issues within the series, particularly in higher grades. San Francisco produced approximately 1.4 million coins identified by a small S mint mark, creating another branchment issue that attracts considerable attention from collectors. However, mintage figures alone never tell the complete story. The true investigation focuses on survival. Buffalo nickels circulated extensively, and Fraser's beautiful design unfortunately placed the date and several major design elements on high points that wore down rapidly. Countless 1924 nickels eventually lost their dates altogether or became so smooth that identifying their original detail became difficult. That heavy circulation dramatically reduced the population of sharply preserved examples available to collectors today, especially for the Denver and San Francisco issues. Holding a genuine 1924 Buffalo nickel reveals a surprisingly sophisticated piece of engineering. Every authentic example should contain an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weigh approximately 5 grams, measure 21.2 millimeters across, and feature a plain edge without reeds. Those specifications provide an important starting point during authentication, but experienced specialists immediately continue looking far beyond simple measurements. They inspect the lettering for proper shape, study the texture of the metal under magnification, examine the transition between raised and recessed design elements, and search for the microscopic flow lines created when immense striking pressure forced metal into every recess of the dies. Counterfeit coins often appear convincing from a distance, yet reveal porous surfaces. Unusually soft details, incorrect fonts, or unnatural color when examined carefully. Altered mint marks represent another concern, particularly because adding or modifying a mint mark can falsely imitate scarcer issues. For that reason, collectors frequently rely on professional grading services such as PCGS or NGC to authenticate coins before assigning substantial collector premiums. Independent certification provides confidence that both authenticity and condition have been evaluated according to widely accepted industry standards. As the investigation continues, attention naturally shifts toward preservation because condition determines far more than appearance alone. A heavily circulated buffalo nickel gradually loses the sharp separation within the Native American's hair, while the buffalo's horn becomes shorter until it eventually disappears entirely. Collectors immediately notice whether liberty remains bold, whether the date is complete, whether individual feathers retain separation, and whether the buffalo still displays muscular definition across its shoulder and hindquarters. Original mint luster, created when the coin first left the presses, becomes especially important on mint state examples because it confirms the surfaces have remained largely undisturbed by circulation. Unlike copper cents, buffalo nickels are not categorized by official color designations such as red or brown. Instead, specialists evaluate natural silver gray, golden, champagne, or lightly iridescent tunning that develops over decades. Artificial cleaning frequently destroys those original surfaces, leaving unnatural brightness or fine hairline scratches that experienced collectors detect immediately. Eye appeal becomes a combination of strike quality, originality, luster, tunning, and surface preservation, rather than a single characteristic viewed in isolation. Only after those investigative steps have been completed does the discussion naturally turn toward collector value. Authentication always comes first because two coins carrying the same date may differ dramatically in desirability once grading begins. A circulated 1924 Philadelphia issue with honest wear generally remains an affordable historical collectible, while authenticated mint state examples displaying strong luster and minimal marks become significantly more desirable. Certified uncirculated coins have often traded in approximately the $1,450 to $3,150 range, depending on numerical grade, strike sharpness, originality, eye appeal, and prevailing market demand. The 1924 D issue becomes considerably more competitive in higher grades because relatively few sharply preserved survivors remain available, while exceptional 1924 S examples also attract sustained attention whenever attractive certified specimens appear. From time to time, elite registry quality buffalo nickels have realized prices well beyond these levels, but those extraordinary auction results belong only to authenticated coins with exceptional preservation or recognized rarity within the certified population. They should never be interpreted as the typical value of every 1924 buffalo nickel encountered in circulation or inherited through a family collection. No serious investigation would be complete without examining varieties and mint-made anomalies, because these can dramatically influence collector interest when properly authenticated. The 1924 buffalo nickel is not associated with a famous major variety comparable to certain other dates within the series, and responsible researchers should acknowledge that rather than inventing non-existent rarities. Nevertheless, genuine mint errors including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and significant die cracks are known across the buffalo nickel series, although each remains legitimately scarce and requires individual authentication. Collectors also remain alert for doubled design elements or unusual die states, but every suspected discovery deserves expert verification before premium value is assumed. Far more common than genuine mint errors is post-mint damage caused by harsh cleaning, polishing, tooling, corrosion, or environmental exposure. Those alterations generally reduce collector value instead of increasing it. Proper long-term preservation means storing coins in inert archival holders, avoiding PVC-containing plastics, minimizing direct handling by touching only the edges, and maintaining a stable environment with controlled humidity. Such simple precautions help preserve original surfaces that collectors consistently reward with stronger demand. After examining every detail, the true significance of the 1924 Buffalo nickel becomes clear. Its appeal is not rooted simply in age, nor solely in its artistic beauty, but in the remarkable combination of history, craftsmanship, survival, and careful evaluation that accompanies every authenticated example. Each coin represents a century-long journey through American commerce, carrying evidence of every year it spent changing hands before eventually finding its way into a collection. For experienced numismatists, the investigation never ends with the date alone. It continues through the strike, the luster, the surfaces, the originality, the mint mark, and the countless subtle clues that reveal whether a coin is merely old or genuinely exceptional. That disciplined approach explains why collectors continue competing for the finest certified 1924 Buffalo nickels generation after generation. While only a small number of elite condition examples or authenticated mint errors have achieved remarkable auction performances, every genuine survivor offers an opportunity to study one of the most celebrated designs in American coinage, and to appreciate how rarity is built through preservation, authenticity, and informed collecting rather than simple age alone. Last coin. At first glance, a dateless Buffalo nickel can seem like little more than a worn piece of old pocket change, yet it has puzzled collectors for generations. Millions of Americans have handled Buffalo nickels since they first entered circulation in 1913, but very few understand why so many surviving examples have completely lost their dates, while the rest of the design still remains partially visible. That missing date is not the result of a secret mint variety or a mysterious manufacturing mistake. Instead, it tells the story of how the coin was designed, how it was used, and how decades of everyday commerce slowly erased one of its most important identifying features. As this investigation unfolds, you'll discover why collectors immediately pay attention to a dateless Buffalo nickel, what determines whether it still has collectible significance, and how authenticated examples with identifiable dates and exceptional preservation have performed in the numismatic marketplace over time. To understand why the date disappeared, we first have to return to the beginning of the Buffalo nickel story. Introduced in 1913, the coin replaced the Liberty Head nickel as part of an effort to create a more distinctly American coinage. Sculptor James Earl Fraser designed the obverse using features inspired by several Native American leaders, while the reverse portrayed an American bison, celebrating the nation's Western heritage. The coin was struck at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, depending on the year, with Denver coins carrying a small D mint mark and San Francisco coins an S beneath the denomination on the reverse. Each coin was manufactured from an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighed approximately 5 grams, measured 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and featured a plain edge. Although Fraser's design was widely praised for its artistic beauty, it introduced a practical problem that would become one of the defining characteristics of the entire series. The date was positioned on one of the highest points of the obverse, leaving it unusually vulnerable to friction every time the coin entered circulation. That design choice explains why so many Buffalo nickels exist today without visible dates. Every time the coin rubbed against other coins inside cash drawers, purses, and pockets, the highest points absorbed the greatest amount of wear. The date sat directly on the raised shoulder beneath the Native American portrait, one of the first areas to experience constant abrasion. Unlike recessed lettering that remains protected below the surrounding surface, the date projected outward, meaning years of ordinary circulation gradually wore the numerals away until they disappeared completely. This was not a mint defect, and it was not caused by poor quality metal. It was simply the unavoidable consequence of a beautiful but impractical design being used exactly as intended. During the early 20th century, very few people set aside Buffalo nickels as collectibles. They were working coins, exchanged countless times for food, transportation, newspapers, and everyday purchases, and millions eventually became dateless through normal use. Experienced collectors recognize this wear pattern immediately. Before looking for rarity, they examine whether any trace of the date survives, whether a mint mark remains visible, and how much detail is preserved in the Native Americans' hair, braid, feather, and facial features. On the reverse, they study the buffalo's horn, shoulder, hip, and tail, while also evaluating the lettering and denomination. Original mint luster, when present, can dramatically improve collector interest because it indicates the coin escaped prolonged circulation. Unlike copper cents, buffalo nickels are not assigned official color classifications such as red or brown, since their copper-nickel alloy tones differently over time, often developing natural gray, golden, or lightly iridescent surfaces. Professional grading services evaluate strike quality, originality, eye appeal, surface preservation, and wear before assigning standardized grades. A dateless buffalo nickel generally cannot receive the same level of collector demand as a comparable example with a fully readable date, because the missing date prevents precise attribution to a specific year, and sometimes to a particular mint issue. Over the years, collectors have developed methods to determine the original date on some dateless buffalo nickels, but those methods require careful explanation. The best practice is simply to preserve the coin in its existing condition. Historically, a chemical product known as a date restoration solution has sometimes been used to reveal faint traces of the original date by reacting differently with worn and unworn metal. While this process may make the date readable, it permanently alters the surface of the coin. Because of that alteration, professionally restored coins generally receive less collector interest than coins retaining naturally visible dates. Major grading services typically identify such pieces as having altered surfaces rather than grading them normally. For anyone hopping a dateless buffalo nickel might be a significant rarity. The safest approach is to avoid experimentation and instead seek advice from an experienced numismatist or a reputable third-party grading service before making irreversible changes. Once authenticity, identification, and preservation have been considered, market value begins to reflect what collectors actually seek. A buffalo nickel with a complete, naturally preserved date and attractive original surfaces is almost always more desirable than a similar dateless example. Depending on the specific year, mint mark, certification, grade, originality, and eye appeal, authenticated mint state buffalo nickels from collectible dates have frequently traded within approximately $1,600 to $3,400. Particularly scarce dates, recognized die varieties, or elite certified examples can command substantially stronger prices. Extraordinary auction results reported for the series almost always involve authenticated high-grade coins, famous varieties such as the 1918 7D overdate or the 1937 D three-legged buffalo, or important mint-era pieces. Those remarkable prices should never be interpreted as applying to every buffalo nickel, especially one whose identifying date has been completely worn away. In numismatics, preservation and certainty of identification are essential components of value. Counterfeit awareness has also become increasingly important because buffalo nickels remain one of America's most collected coin series. Some altered pieces have had mint marks added, dates modified, or surfaces artificially aged in attempts to imitate more valuable issues. Others are modern replicas created by casting rather than striking, leaving porous textures and softened design details that trained specialists recognize immediately. Professional authentication through respected grading services provides confidence that a coin is genuine and accurately identified. For long-term preservation, collectors recommend storing buffalo nickels in inert archival holders free from PVC, handling them only by the edges, avoiding cleaning or polishing, and protecting them from moisture, humidity, and rapid temperature changes. Even a worn buffalo nickel deserves careful treatment because every original surface preserves evidence of its journey through American history, and unnecessary cleaning often destroys information that experienced numismatists value more than artificial brightness. Perhaps the most remarkable lesson taught by a dateless buffalo nickel is that even its missing date has historical meaning. It reminds us that this coin fulfilled the purpose for which it was created, circulating through countless hands during an era of extraordinary change in the United States. While the absence of the date usually limits collector value compared with fully identifiable examples, it also illustrates one of the most famous design weaknesses in American coinage. Every surviving buffalo nickel, whether sharply preserved or heavily worn, carries the artistic vision of James Earl Fraser and the legacy of a series that remains among the most admired ever produced by the United States Mint. For collectors, the greatest rewards come not from assumptions, but from careful observation, authentication, and informed research. Sometimes the smallest missing detail tells the biggest story. Keep looking closely, because every old coin has another chapter waiting to be uncovered.